Hey everyone, for TRICHOMES.com, I'm Ashley Manning, and this is Careers in Cannabis. On this show, we sit down with staffing agencies, cannabis companies, and other industry professionals to discuss employment opportunities in the burgeoning cannabis industry. Many might think that because they're going to have a career in cannabis, that drug testing ends, but that's not always the case. And drug testing has certainly become an issue in many states, even for outside of the cannabis industry. So I wanted to get a little clarity on this topic from today's guest, who has helped place thousands of employees in hemp and cannabis jobs in over a couple dozen states. And luckily, all of their clients that drug test make an exception for THC for those with a medical marijuana card. On this episode, we talked to James Yagielo, CEO of HempStaff, the industry leader in medical marijuana recruiting and dispensary training. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
It's good to revisit this conversation with you. So let's start, for those who didn't catch your interview last time, let's start with a little bit about who HempStaff is and where you guys started.
Sure. HempStaff, we have been in business since 2014, doing recruiting and training in both the hemp and cannabis industries. We are Florida-based, but we do nationwide recruiting and training, and we have our recruiters and business developers nationwide. It started with me and my wife, both have recruiting backgrounds, and in 2014, we saw the cannabis industry as, the next big industry. So I switched from IT, which was the big industry 20 years ago, to what I think is the new IT of cannabis.
I agree, the new Silicon Valley of cannabis for sure. There's been a trending topic that I've been wanting to discuss with a recruiter, and that's the reason for me reaching out to you. I've heard it on Clubhouse, it's going out in traditional news, and that is the trending topic about pre-employment drug testing. And the reason I use quotes is because I don't consider THC a drug, and I wish they would exclude that from the verbiage. So what's the deal with pre-employment testing when you're working in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, that is certainly a conundrum, to say the least. It's definitely different state by state. Some states like Maryland actually require drug testing as a state law. So,
Oh,
wow. That's the strictest one. It's the only one I can think of offhand that actually requires it. Others kind of a company policy, whether they do or not. Now, what I can say for our clients, at least the ones that drug test, if they drug test and you have a medical marijuana card, they allow you to test positive for THC. We haven't actually had any clients in recreational cannabis states drug test. So that would be a little more of a gray area. I don't know how they would work around that. But the ones we have are in medical states, and they do drug tests. But if you have your medical card, THC isn't an issue at all.
Okay, that makes sense. And, it seems that if you're able to do other legal things like consume alcohol, that would be why is cannabis excluded when it's legal in those recreational states? So
Exactly.
I know California just had a bill put out today. I'm not sure if it'll pass, about removing past medical cannabis use or in recreational use because it's legal. We'll see where that goes. My fingers are crossed because it doesn't make sense. It seems unfair.
Yeah, and there are many lawsuits that have been won against companies like Amazon and Walmart, where they fired someone for medical use of marijuana, and they had a legitimate medical card, and they won a settlement in court. So that's why a lot of, even outside of cannabis industry, they're starting to allow people with medical marijuana cards to test positive for THC.
That's great. That's great news that it's moving forward. Do you think it's a liability issue, maybe on the insurance carrier says, to have risk mitigation insurance for their employees, they have to drug test?
Yeah, a lot of times it is your larger corporations that drug test, and it is because they get a discount under workman's comp a lot of times. That's unfortunately really the driving factor of drug testing in any industry in the country. It's due to those discounts that insurance and workman's comp companies are giving people because they figure if they drug test, there'll be less accidents at work. It really goes back to the factory days of not being impaired while you're working with machinery. Unfortunately, it's kind of flowed over to the white collar jobs as well.
I mean, I can totally understand the liability aspect. You're working machines that could cut off your fingers, and whether you are medicating with cannabis medically or you're taking, your pain medication. Either way, I don't want to say it because it's not a proven fact that cannabis is an impairment, but there's an impairment in, we'll just ignore what I was going to say.
Yeah,
There is
well,
some form of
exactly. I mean, you
impairment.
should be using Vicodin even if it's prescribed to you on those same machines. So
Right.
it's similar to that effect is the way we look at
Right. Well, thanks for giving us a little bit of clarity on that, because
it. Sure.
it's definitely going around, and it's kind of confusing if you want to work in cannabis and have a career and you're getting tested for something you're working for. It just doesn't make
Yeah,
sense and
very
seems
ironic.
unfair. So, so let's get into the interview portion of what we want to talk about. On your last interview, you said that the hemp industry is good. Careers are going to surpass the cannabis industry, and I know that since that interview, the USDA published their final rule for production of hemp, which takes place in next week, actually, March 22nd. So that'll be right when this interview goes out. Is that going to open up more doors to hemp processors and career opportunities in hemp, or is there more work to be done?
It slowly will. It slowly will. I mean, the biggest bottleneck with hemp is the factories, as I stated before. Now there are, I believe, 10 in all of North America. That's it. And each one can only, process around, I want to say 6 million pounds or so a month. So while it sounds like a lot, there's a lot more in that grown right now. So, and they're also finding the logistics of moving hemp to keep hemp fresh enough for the processing of the stalks and industrial. You can't really ship it long distances in semi trucks that aren't climate controlled.
Refrigerated.
Right, because
Mm-hmm.
it'll start to go bad really quickly. So they're, without refrigeration control, you're looking at only about 100-mile radius that they can really get the hemp to a factory before some degradation starts. So
Wow.
there's a lot of logistics to work out with hemp. It is going to be, dwarf the cannabis industry. Might take 10 years to get there, but definitely the passage of that bill will help open up more doors. And I saw there is talk about maybe raising the THC level of hemp as well, which may help with some of the restrictions growers are seeing also.
Very exciting news about that 1%.
Yeah,
Fingers
absolutely.
again are crossed. I think that is phenomenal progress for us overall. Watch out, cannabis industry.
Exactly.
On that note, we have listeners from that range in all different experience levels, entry level, not even touch the cannabis industry. So for those entry people who are curious about having a career in cannabis or hemp, can you explain the difference in the hemp industry versus the cannabis industry?
Sure. Well, first, for those that don't know, hemp right now has to be 0.3% THC or less. So that's the big, battling factor is if someone has a 0.5% of THC on their hemp farm, it gets thrown away. So right now, the cannabis industry is medical and recreational, where the hemp industry is CBD or industrial processing products like clothing and paper and whatnot. The cannabis industry on one side, extremely regulated. You're always going to have background checks, get licensed through the state. Where the hemp industry, those people who maybe don't have as clean of a background can still get a job working in a CBD store or hemp farm because they don't have the same restrictions at the state level of getting badged to work in that industry. So, cannabis industry, a lot of people like it because that's where the THC and other cannabinoids are. Hemp industry is more farming and factory work, but a lot looser restrictions. So, those are really the two main differences between those industries.
Great synopsis for those. It's digestible, so that makes sense. While we're speaking about the hemp industry, it's getting very close to the crops needing to be put in the ground. So what are some current hemp opportunities? I would assume there should be quite a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, once it is put in the ground, you have farm opportunities first and foremost. They need people to work on those farms. As it gets later in the year, they look for more people because you need more people to harvest it than you do to plant it. So definitely, as the season goes on, hemp jobs get more and more popular. Um, Now, a lot of people this year, it's going to be iffy to see if as many people get into hemp this year as did the previous 2 years. 2 years ago, there was a lot of hemp that wasn't used. So last year, there was a pullback even before COVID of the number of hemp farmers. Now, last year, a lot more states did get legalized hemp. So it's going to be interesting to see what the final numbers are this year and if it goes back to 2019 numbers or if it still decreases a little as people realize the CBD market is pretty saturated. And as I said, the industrial market isn't quite mature enough yet.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So, when you say seasons in hemp, what are those seasons? So, if someone's listening to this interview right now, when can they anticipate applying for a job in the hemp industry?
Yeah, I mean, right now, a lot of hemp people are hiring their master growers to get their seeds in the ground and get the process going. Um, One thing I forgot to mention: testing labs in hemp is huge. Everybody has to test to make sure they aren't over that 0.03%. So a lot of people with chemistry or science degrees are moving into the hemp industry as well. So that's another aspect of a whole different type of career move that people are making is the scientists in the hemp. But back to the grow season. Right now they're planting, and as it goes, they'll be hiring more farmers in a couple months once the seeds pop up to do the testing, pH testing, the watering, other menial tasks around the farm. And then in late fall, that's when you really get the harvesting, and they need dozens more people because they got to do the harvesting. If they're doing CBD flower, they may need trimming. If they're doing processing, they're going to need lab extractor technicians. So there's a lot of different things that could happen, and all that season changes in a state like Florida. It's year round, so they could plant in January, maybe harvest in June, and then it's a little hot depending on where they are in Florida. Maybe plant again in September and harvest again in January before the next crop goes in. So the southern states are going to see a little bit different of seasons rather than the northern or western states.
Makes sense. And to touch also on the note of chemists working in lab testing, that's hemp and cannabis industry. And
Yes.
according to the recent salary guides, those who are working in the labs are getting paid much higher salaries than the average would in a traditional lab as well. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we
that's
were
a
seeing salaries 140 to 220 a year for, a lab director with a PhD.
wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. With benefits as well.
Yes, absolutely.
That because I know it's hit or miss in job opportunities for there to be a benefits package or not. Just as we mature, they're going to come about, but not
Sure, the
always.
testing labs seem to offer benefits more because they tend to have more of a other industry uh, plan, if you will. A lot of these testing companies were testing, for other products. They were testing organic products or testing, different metal products or whatever. So they kind of usually come from another industry. So they already have their benefit plans and insurance set from the other industry they were in, and they're just translating it to the cannabis or hemp industry.
Very true. Unlike the manufacturing side of things and
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The
distribution, they're
cultivation and
still
manufacturing, those people are, kind of just coming from everywhere.
they're still sitting on buckets as they're trimming.
Right.
So, what are some current hot jobs in the cannabis industry specifically that you're seeing? I know you guys hire all the time, year round, but
Mhm.
what's really hot right now for cannabis?
In the cannabis industry, it's still master extractors. Everyone's looking for a cheaper way, a better way, or, a new cannabinoid, if you will. So that's always the most sought after is really good master extractors. After that, we're actually starting to get a lot of, dispensary manager positions in. It seems a lot of these places are expanding very quickly, and it used to be it took them a little while to expand, and an assistant manager would move up to the manager of the new store. But when they're expanding and opening 3, 4 stores at once, they don't have enough internal employees to take over the managerial duties. So in states that are expanding quickly, like Arizona right now, we're starting to see more dispensary manager jobs because they're just growing quicker than they can train internal employees.
Makes sense. Scaling, it's growth.
Absolutely.
It's needed in any industry. New Jersey just legalized, so have they? I know it's not active just yet, but I would assume operations need to begin. Is that a hot market for you guys then, or is it going to
It's
be a
still a little
slow?
too early. We
Okay.
have gotten reached out by some current licensees. Obviously, the ones doing medical now will be the first to be involved in the recreational. It still looks like it's probably going to be August before applications are actually out. Usually, once applications are out, that's when the rush starts. Everyone, contacts us to, see how we can help them find the right employees. Some of them use us as their staffing partner on their application to try to boost their application a little bit. So, really, it's after the applications are released that we get the big rush. Um, but like I said, some of the current licensees are starting to, let us know that they do plan to apply. But once again, they probably won't be hiring until fall.
Yeah, you are gonna have your hands full between harvest and all these new states coming on board, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
very
We expect
exciting.
the last quarter of 2021 to be a very big one job wise in both industries.
Well, I'll know to pick up the phone and give you a call, and we'll get you back on the show to talk about some of those opportunities and help spread that message for you.
Sounds like a plan.
Um, So another topic you had on I wanted to follow up on a lot of the topics you brought up on your previous interview. And this topic was regarding people who were mid-degree, leaving their mid-degree, well, mostly probably because of the pandemic and not being able to be in school. Have you noticed them not actually returning back to finish their degree because they like the cannabis industry so much, or you might not even have that answer?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, a lot of candidates don't really keep in touch with us. We give them a job, they go on to their job, and everything's good, and they kind of forget about us. But if they aren't looking for a job, they don't really need us, I guess. But the ones we have kept in touch with, they are keeping their cannabis jobs. They realize this is a career that has a lot of potential. Um, some of them are going back to school at night, or if they're working part time, they're working around their cannabis schedule to go back to school. But I haven't heard of anyone that went into the cannabis industry and decided, this isn't really for me. I'm gonna go back to college instead. I think if anything, they're doing both. I don't think anyone, decided that the cannabis industry doesn't have an upside at this point.
That is fantastic news. I honestly got the chills just because that excites me to know that people are really getting the message. That means
Oh
us
yeah.
as an industry, we're doing a really good job at ending that stigma and giving people what they need. So that's part of my personal mission and professional mission. So that's great. What would be some big brother advice you would give someone who is applying to cannabis and they've never done it? They just know that there's an opportunity and that they fit in somewhere in the space. But there's some reality checks too, though, that misconceptions people have about working in the cannabis industry.
Sure. First thing I always tell people is think of what you're good at and what you have experience at and how it can apply to the cannabis industry. Because there's all types of jobs. If you're an accountant now, go be an accountant in the cannabis industry. You don't have to start as an entry level grower. You already have the accounting skills. Same thing with like an inventory or sales or marketing. So a lot of people just get stuck in grower, bud tender kind of jobs, but it's a whole industry. So there's so many jobs that most likely you have a skill that can be applied there. If you're younger and say you don't have those skills, we recommend obtain those skills. You want to be a grower? We know a couple people that went out and got jobs at the local nursery growing roses. And then when the cultivation job came up, they had that nursery experience and very easily landed the entry level cultivation job because no one else had that nursery experience. Same thing with a bud tender. Go work at Macy's for a couple months and you get a little bit of retail under your belt, and that's what they're looking for with that you know how to work with customers, run the cash register, that kind of thing. So look at what your experience is. If you don't have it, look at what you want to do and get experience outside the campus industry to boost your resume. As for expectations, now if you're an IT guy making 100 grand a year, you aren't going to find that in the campus industry. That's a very rare job. So there are jobs that just aren't going to translate. I get that question all the time. I make, $70,000 now as a electrician. What can I do in the cannabis industry? I mean, maybe if you got lucky and became an electrician for someone that builds grow rooms, you might be able to make that. But there's probably 5 of those jobs in the whole industry. So, while I say look at what you have done in the past, you also have to really think about your experience, your salary, and how that will translate to the cannabis industry or hemp industry as well.
Perfect. Great big brother advice.
Thanks.
Last question I have for you is, what is the most important detail to include on a resume? And there's a reason I'm asking this question, because there's different responses. And I think people are getting excited about the career opportunities in cannabis, and they're just thinking, here's my resume, and they're forgetting some important details.
Yeah, I mean, that first paragraph, the objective, that has really gotten muddled over the years. Like back when I was in college and they were teaching resumes, there's always like, make your objective to obtain a job in the cannabis industry, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that anymore. That should now be a summary of yourself. That's the first thing they're reading. So the first things you want that person to know about you should be in that summary. And also personalize it. Put the company name in there, put the position in there, so they know you did that resume specifically for them. That really does go a long way, because so many people just send out the same resume over and over and over. Just taking the time to replace 2 words makes a big difference to the employer. And thirdly, don't worry too much about putting your photo up there, or making it look super super pretty with all these different colors and stuff. Content is more important than appearance in a resume. I have, we've given some resumes that are not very good, and the person's very qualified, and they get looked over. And we've given some where the person was just semi-qualified but really nailed the resume, and they get the interview. So it really is about content more than anything.
Agree that, well, listeners, you got to listen to the headhunter, the recruiter who is looking at these resumes and handing them off. You're the best person to ask. You're the kind of the gatekeeper, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. If you don't get through us, you don't get to the client.
Right. And I think with the growth of the industry on hemp and cannabis, they're utilizing staffing services a lot more than their own word of mouth. We're finding out very easily that, word of mouth and referrals don't necessarily work out, although you want to help people. And that's what the cannabis industry has been built upon is, how can we help you and how can they help me, and let's work together. But as we grow and we're going to have to bring that a little bit more together.
Especially with 200-300 resumes a job. We're getting bigger companies that have 3-4 HR people coming to us because they have 10 openings. They're getting 2,000 resumes a day. Even with a team of 4, they can't go through them in a fashion that they would like to find the diamonds in the rough, as we say.
Or the unicorns, as you were looking for those special cannabinoids for extractors.
Those happen a lot in this industry.
Unicorns. All right. If you're a unicorn, you need to apply to HempStaff.
Absolutely. We're looking for them all the
time. And final question for you is, how can people reach HempStaff? How can you guys be reached to look at open job opportunities?
Sure. Our main website, hempstaff.com, has all our information there. You can register and upload your resume to be a candidate with us. We have our job openings listed. We have our training classes listed. If you're a client looking for employees, you can fill out a form for us to contact you and start the process there as well. We have a couple other websites. Cannabisemployment.com is our job board of public job openings we currently have. It's updated real time. So we recommend people check that daily and see if there's any jobs in their area. And dispensarytraining.com is our training website. We do all of our trainings virtually now over Zoom. So, we don't necessarily have to be in your area like we used to have to be. And of course, we're on all social media: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Under HempStaff, you can find us at all those.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great interview. If there's nothing you want to leave off, any message or anything, then we will take off for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great. I enjoyed it. And, 2021 is a great year for cannabis and hemp.
Awesome. Well, we'll chat with you soon. Thank you so much, James.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye. My thanks again to James Yagielo for being my guest on today's episode. You can follow our series Careers in Cannabis, as well as more great shows like this one, at TRICHOMES.com. If you're a member of the cannabis community and you have a story you want to share with us, please reach out. You can reach the show by emailing careersincannabis@trichomes.com. Please take a second to subscribe to the podcast, write a review. It really helps others to find the show. You can also join in the discussion with industry insiders by visiting trichomes.com. For trichomes.com, I'm Ashley Manning. Thank you for listening and be well.